What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another edition of Pistons Daily, where you can find daily content covering all things Detroit Pistons all year long. I'm your host. My name is Kyle Garrison. I'm over on Twitter at Kyle Garrison2, where I talk all things Detroit sports. So come on over, say hello, give me comments, questions, concerns, episode ideas. I'd love to hear from you guys. With that being said, let's jump right into today's video. So first thing I want to talk about is Trajan Langdon's reaction to the draft. And then I want to hop into some undrafted free agents that the Pistons went after following the draft and will be on their summer league team. And then I just want to dive into a little bit of Ron Holland film breakdown. And then lastly, I just want to touch on Andre Drummond and if I think the Pistons should bring him in on a vet minimum to just kind of be a mentor to Jalen Duren and Isaiah Stewart this upcoming season. But first things first, let's hop into what Trajan Langdon thought about the draft. So clearly, they stayed at 37. They liked their guy in Chaz Laneir at 37, decided to stay put, didn't make any moves up into the first round. Trajan Langdon essentially just talked about how it was way too expensive to move into that late first round. They would have had to give up a ton of draft assets, and they just didn't feel it was necessary. They thought that if they stayed at 37, they'd have a good chance of getting their guy, which was Chaz Laneir. They liked his work ethic. They liked his workouts, his ability to spot up. Some of the things I talked about yesterday. Just a very good floor spacing guard with elite shooting ability, and showed the ability to improve defensively. So I think Trajan Langdon and his staff really liked Laneir, and when he fell to them at 37, I think it was a pretty encouraging sign for them because they didn't make a move up into the first round. If they lost out on Chaz Laneir because they waited too long, I think they would have been kicking themselves. And then in that case, you might have to go after a guy like Cam Jones, who I also really liked. So you couldn't really go wrong with who you took at 37, but I like the addition with Chaz Laneir. I like them staying put at 37, not making any irrational decisions and moving up in a draft where you might still be getting somebody who is very raw prospect, and they took the surefire playmaker, surefire shooter in Chaz Laneir. They know what they have in him, and I really like just the addition overall and the fit, like I talked about yesterday. But I just want to touch on a couple things with Laneir that Trajan Langdon liked. He alluded to the fact that kind of something that I talked about yesterday was he made the jump from North Florida to Tennessee very easily, and moving from a small mid-major up to the best conference in basketball last year in the SEC is very hard. Rick Barnes runs a very complicated system, and he thrived in it right away. So Trajan Langdon liked the fact that he's adaptable, and he can come into new systems and learn quickly. So they liked the fact that he made that transition very easily from a mid-major to the SEC, and thrived. He wasn't just a shell of his former self when he was at North Florida, but he really, really thrived for Tennessee, one of the best players in the country, won the Jerry West Award. So clearly he's an adaptable player and will do anything that he's asked to do to make the team better. And you love a coachable guy. You love a guy that can pick up on things quickly, especially in an off-ball shooter who has to understand spacing, who has to understand moving off ball to really be successful. And I think that he can make those strides. And then moving on, I wanted to just touch on a couple of undrafted free agents. So speaking of guys that are very coachable and can thrive in a complex system, Chaz Laneir's teammate last year at Tennessee, Zakai Ziegler, was an undrafted free agent for the Pistons. They picked him up last night. He'll be on the G League or the Summer League roster. I'm assuming he'll be a G League player. I don't see a world where he makes the active roster. He's just 5'9", but he does have a lot of upside. On the defensive end of the floor, he was a very, very solid defender last year at Tennessee. He was a fifth-year player. He was a fourth-year player, excuse me. Averaged 13.6 points per game last year, 2 steals. His averaged 2 steals pretty much his entire career. 7.4 assists, the most of his career. And I like his ability to move the rock. I think he'll be a good addition to the Summer League team. He'll have chemistry with Chaz Laneir, so maybe that'll allow Chaz Laneir to kind of increase his game overall in the Summer League, having somebody he's more comfortable with. But it was interesting. Zakai Ziegler actually filed a lawsuit for a 5th year with the NCAA. He lost that, so he did have to enter the draft this year. Did not end up going drafted. Being a 5'9" point guard, it's very, very hard to find a place in this league. But hopefully he shows out in the Summer League, can earn a 2-way deal or earn a G League contract, and continue playing basketball, because he's a very talented player. He had some great moments in March throughout his time at Tennessee, and it'd be cool to see him kind of carve his path in the NBA, and maybe even one day make an active roster. But I don't see that being the case this year, but I do like the fact that he's on the Summer League team. He's going to give you good defense, and I think it's going to be a really fun Summer League roster overall, and in large part to do with the next guy that I want to talk about. Another undrafted free agent the Pistons went out and got is Bryce Williams out of Nebraska. Just a high-level scorer. Incredible score overall. Last year at Nebraska, he had at least 20 games of 20-plus points. He had 4 30-point games, a 43-point game versus Ohio State. He is just an elite scorer. Last year at Nebraska, he did average 20 points per game, 20.4 to be exact, 4.1 rebounds, 2.9 assists, 1.1 steals. So not a terrible liability defensively. He is 6'7". He's a 6'7" guard. He's pretty long, so he does have good size. And I like the pickup for the Summer League. I think he can be an elite scorer that just spaces the floor more and gives more opportunity to guys like Bobby Klintman and Chaz Laneir, who I think will be featured very heavily in the Summer League. Ron Holland a little bit. I do expect him probably only to play 2 games or so before getting shut down. So later on in the week in Vegas, it's going to be interesting to see how some of these undrafted free agents play, how they mesh with guys that will be on the roster. I think there's probably going to only be 2 players on the Summer League roster that will be on the actual Pistons team come October, and that's going to be Ron Holland and Bobby Klintman. And then Chaz Laneir, obviously, I think will also be on the roster. But when we're just talking about Laneir and Bobby Klintman, both former second-round picks, I think they're both in very similar situations where they're kind of developmental pieces, and once they start to come into their own, they're going to get more of an opportunity. So I'm excited to see what Bobby does, see the improvements he made. I know I talked about that a couple episodes ago, and I'm also very excited to see how Chaz Laneir works out. But I am excited to see, guys like Bryce Williams and Zakai Ziegler, who were phenomenal players in college, and see if they can kind of translate to the next level. With Bryce Williams, very similar to Chaz Laneir, really came into his own over the past couple of years. He was a transfer from Charlotte where he was averaging, 4, 10, and then coming to Nebraska, he really started to pick it up, averaging 13 last year, and then increasing that to 20 this year. So he's got elite level scoring talent. He showed the ability to improve, even at a little bit of an older age. And another guy, I don't think he can make the final roster, but could be a two-way guard if given an opportunity. Could show elite shooting upside. But most likely will be a G League guy going forward. Could be an option for the Pistons. Like I said, 6'7", pretty long, does play that guard position, can play point guard a little bit. So I like the fit, and I like them going out and getting a guy who could have been a second-round draft pick, did fall and wasn't ended up selected yesterday, but still very talented prospect overall. And then moving on, I just wanted to do a little bit of a Ron Holland film breakdown last night. I was just kind of going through some Ron Holland tape from this past year. And some of the things that I really liked was he showed the ability to beat quicker and more experienced defenders off of the bounce. There was a couple times where he was able to take Derek White off of the bounce and get layups in the paint. We know Derek White is one of the best defensive guards in the entire league. Ron Holland is obviously more of a forward/wing, but he's quick enough where you do have to put smaller guards and quicker guards on him, and he showed the ability to really body them and utilize his strength to get to the rim. So I like that he's a very tough matchup because he's stronger than most wings and quicker than most guards. So there's a ton of upside, I think, offensively with Ron Holland, especially with his ability to create mismatches. But you could see last year, specifically in a game against the Pelicans, he finished at the rim in so many different ways, and just a variety of different ways. Whether it was a duck in, a post up, a drive into a floater, he was able to get to the middle of the paint a couple of times, shoot a little floater when he wasn't able to get all the way to the rim, and he was able to finish. So it showed excellent touch at the rim. He can drive baseline with the best of them. He shows great body control when he's kind of ducking under, trying to go up and under, or just finding a way to get from the baseline, from the corner to the rack. Obviously, with his inability to shoot, having the ability to drive baseline off of a pump fake on a catch and shoot opportunity is very, very helpful for a guy who does struggle with his shot. But there was so many times last year where you could see the potential in him just being an explosive athlete that finishes at the rim, can take defenders off the bounce. And he was only 19 last year. He was 19 years old as a rookie, so there's so much room for improvement here. He was a G League Ignite player. I don't know how much they really work on the developmental parts of your game, but I think that he is a prospect that has a ton of upside, and continuing to work on his game at the next level is going to just pay dividends in the long run for him. And especially just with his defensive upside as well. There's just so much to like about Ron's game. I'm excited to see him kind of put it together in Summer League, even if it's just for a game or two. But I think that he's going to have a really big impact on this team and will fill a lot of the uncertainty with the backup wings that the Pistons have right now. He's a long-term piece for sure in this team's future. And I really like where he's headed as a player overall. And then moving on, last thing I wanted to touch on before we wrap things up, Andre Drummond. With Paul Reed being a free agent this summer, I don't think that it's very likely that he will return. If he would to, it would probably be on the veteran minimum. But a guy I think would be interesting would be Andre Drummond. He's nearing the end of his career. He's had an excellent career in this league. And I think reuniting can make a lot of sense. He has shown that he cheers for Detroit. He was cheering for Detroit during the playoffs this year. He has roots in Detroit. He loves the Pistons community. He loves the Pistons fan base. And I just think he'd be a good veteran fit next to Jalen Duren and Isaiah Stewart. Obviously, his offensive part of his game in his career was in the paint, finishing at the rim. So I think with a guy like Jalen Duren, he could be a good veteran mentor to help him improve his finishing at the rim, but also to kind of reiterate to him how important it is for him to develop more of a jump shot and be consistent at the free throw line, because those are shortcomings in Andre Drummond's career that really just inhibited his ability to improve, was just his lack of an offensive bag. He really was such a one-dimensional player on the offensive end of the floor. He wasn't a great rim protector, was decent, and just really made most of his money rebounding. So I think that if he can kind of continue to give examples to Jalen Duren and Isaiah Stewart of his career and the kind of the shortcomings and where he didn't make strides that he should have, and that will allow Isaiah Stewart and Jalen Duren to really see that, to be a center in this league, you have to be more than just a finisher at the rim or more than just a defender. You have to be able to do multiple different things on the floor at once on both ends of the floor. And I just think Andre Drummond could kind of he would do a good job of coming in and just being a veteran voice in this locker room where, you don't really have very many older players. It's really just Tobias Harris and Tim Hardaway Jr., and you're not sure what the future holds for those guys. So a guy like Andre Drummond would be pretty fun. Pretty similar to Paul Reed, would only play if he absolutely needed to. I'm not saying go out and get him so he can be a backup option at center. Not in any stretch of the imagination is that a possibility. But I do think that he could come in if there's injuries. He could just give you good rebounding minutes. He averaged 7 points and 7 rebounds last year. So he's still a serviceable player in this league. But as his career winds down, I think coming back to Detroit and kind of finishing things off there where they started would be good for Andre Drummond. He's showed a ton of maturity the past couple of years, kind of identifying what went wrong in his career and giving back to the younger community and just, and allowing them to see what work ethic looks like, and how once you get to the NBA, you're not really that guy anymore. You have to find ways to bring value to your team. And I think that he would just be a fun option next to some of this young core. But that's really all I've got today. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, comment, turn on post notifications, and follow me on Twitter at Kyle Garrison2 for more content covering all things Detroit sports. Let me know in the comments or over on Twitter what you think of Trajan Langdon's decision to not move up in the draft, how you think Ron can improve next year, and what you'd like to see out of him in Summer League. And then also let me know what you think of Andre Drummond signing in free agency, whether or not you would like to see Drummond back in a Pistons uniform. And with that being said, that is going to do it here for episode 10 of Pistons Daily, and I will catch you all next time.